Buenas noches, good evening. I'm Marta Moreno Vega, Director of Creative Justice Initiative, and I'd like to welcome you to a conversation with friends. This conversation spans 41 years. We all went to a conference that I organized with Juan Bimbola and others in Ile Ife. And it was historic because my understanding is, and the records show to date, that that was the only large international African diaspora conference that went to look, research, experience with traditional leaders, people initiated in the tradition, um, people curious about the tradition, young scholars developing their research to look at the tradition, the Orisha tradition, the ancestor tradition in Ile Ife. And 41 years ago, we took about 100, close to 100 people went to this experience. And the exchange was phenomenal. And it was phenomenal because many of us had never been to Ile Ife. I think two of us had at that time, maybe three of us. Asunta Serrano, Illa Asunta Serrano, Barbara Antier, and Mali Ai from Trinidad. So that 41 years later, right? And in the case of Brazil, 42, and in the case of New York, 43, we have seen an incredible growth in terms of people initiating into the tradition, be it in Cuba, in Trinidad, in New York, uh, throughout the world. And we are also seeing changes, right? And culture, that's what culture is. It's vibrant, it changes. And in that process, we have seen some very positive changes and we've seen some negative changes. We've seen some changes that make sense, others that don't. But the important thing is to look to the past so it informs the present and how it has informed the present. So I'd like to start with the imagery, a gallery exhibition of the photograph of Jochi Melero, who went with us as an observer from Puerto Rico. And we're now both in Puerto Rico. And I happened to mention to him that I wanted to do this panel. And he said, oh, let me look at my archives. So you're looking at Jochi's archives. So let me introduce you to Baba Jochi Melero.
Nice to hear
Okay.
from you. Nice to see you. Uh, what I have are some shots that I took on my way through all the places that I, I found in Africa, in Nigeria, in Ife. So, and some areas of Ife also. We went to Oyo, we went to Ibadan, we went to Oshobo. Uh, and these pictures are a little bit of my personal uh, uh, encounter with what I saw there. It was they're very simple. They're trying to pick up the stories. They're trying to pick up the emotions that I went through there. So what you're seeing probably is in this shot some of the elders that we had there. We had Sunta, we had Didi, we had Professor Vega, who was the person who introduced to March, so I could go there. Also, we have a Cuban Babalabo on the left,
Feliz
and there
Cancio, yeah.
we have a Didi and a Mai de Santos from Brazil. Didi is a Pai de Santos also, and these are Shango drummers. They have the bata. They're playing the batas, and it was very interesting because that's the first time I knew or I discovered that the bata are the drums of Shango. The rest of the drums are dum dum. So that was quite a piece of information for me that struck me because here in the diaspora, in the Antilles, all of them are called bata, and they're supposed to be played by for all the Orisha. But this exact show that we have here is the Shango drums, the bata. Now we have here. Let me see what else. Okay, these are some of the group that we have in the conference, some people from Nigeria also. We had the elders from Puerto Rico and from Lucila, from Brazil, Punta Serrano, and then I cannot see very well, but I think we see Molly, and
Oh, yeah, you're from Trinidad, yes.
yeah, there, and that was in front of the entrance of the conference room in the University of Ile Ife,
Correct.
which hosted the conference. It was a very very nice place to be, and I I made a lot of interesting uh, priests from the tradition, because here in Puerto Rico that doesn't happen very often, to see the people who gave us the tradition so it could be brought to the to the to the Americas. Here we have a Babalawo that I did a couple of photographs of him because I found him very, very interesting person. He was very gentle, very, very profound. And it was quite an experience to be one on one with them. Because these serve at this moment I was 32 years old, and they all seem to me to be holy people. So this is the entrance of the uh, palace of the, I think it's the Oni, the Oni of Ife. So they had us a celebration there, and for us, and we were invited to spend time with him there. So this is the 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 entrance is on my back, and that looks at the patio. So let me see what else we have here. Okay, that is a shrine that we visited. I don't remember what the who was the Orisha, but I don't know if it was Eshu or it was, Ogun, but it was either. It was very very uh, enclose the area. So, but the icon is on the inside, and you can see the pillars that are carved in the tradition of the Orisha that is inside the 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 altar. Now, let me see. Okay, this is the shrine of Shango in the house or the palace of the Alafin of Oyo, the political leader. As you can see the rattle, and you can see the double axe there in front of the two columns, and on the inside is where Chango dwells. That's his shrine in the palace, and that's the Puerto Rican in front of the palace too. I thought that I was initiated on the Shanto tradition, and it was incredible to be there. Here, that is the palace of the Oni of Ife, and you can have Professor Vega in front, and next to him is a African Cuban Babalawo, which I don't remember his name.
Félix Cancio.
Right,
Félix Cancio, que está viviendo en Venezuela. Ujú.
right. Felix Cancio, and Felix was presented robes and in order to be dressed in the tradition when he made the Oni. So I was a great gesture of of protocol of I mean inviting us to his palace to spend time with him. Now on the right, yeah, that is another scene where they were dancing and having a great time with the dum dum drums. That because many of these activities, the drummers were sent before to announce that we were getting there, or to amuse the people attending the conference with music and dancing. So it was very interesting because between music and dancing, it made everything go much more interesting and more entertaining. Now we see here Felix Cancio, Lucila, and Dr. Vega, where they were making their speeches in the conferences. Let me see on the right. Uh, this is the the same two babalaos that I talked to you before, and then behind we see Marco Kalish, which was the official photographer, and he has a collection of photographs that are a treasure, a true treasure. They are great photographs. Now we have the other Babalao, or I don't remember his name is, but he is addressing the crowd of people attending there on the outskirts. I think they were trying to explain in that moment. I don't know if there was a art-related conference, art-related information that he was giving to us. Uh, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's Asunta Serrano, which in that moment was the elder has most ranking in New York and in Puerto Rico. And she was most of her time she spent in Africa in Oshobo with Susan Wenger, uh, a long time Orisha Oshun priestess. So they had a great relationship. And when we went to Oshobo, it was really fantastic because we met her and we spent time with her and Sunta. That was quite an experience. Sunta was
And
incredible.
to the side of her was Maliai from Trinidad.
Huh?
If we can go back to that photo,
Yeah.
hold on. There is Maliai from Trinidad.
All right.
And it's and they're very important because they both had already been to Nigeria and have been to Ife.
Yeah.
So they made the road for us more enjoyable, right? Because we were able to make comparisons
Yeah.
between what was happening in Trinidad, what was happening in Puerto Rico, New York, and really do a comparative sort of look at what we were seeing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Uh-huh.
Now we have Felix Cancio with the Babalao that I just talked to you about, and he is next to both of his apprentices because you when your Babalao was around in Nigeria, usually he has his apprentices going with him, learning and helping him doing his chores as a Babalao. For us, that was for me was very interesting because I was a first timer in Nigeria, so was quite an experience. Now this is I can see, let me get closer. Okay, I think this I think Marta is there, and I think I see also Lucila. As you can see, they're playing the drums also because when something happened, the drums had a connective mission, also a communication mission with what was happening. So people knew that was what was happening there because the sounds gave the people the information. The way they play gave them a code, so people knew what was happening there. Okay.
Do you want, hello?
Hello. Yes.
Yeah. Could you go back one? Yeah. This drummer here is Chief Muraina Oyelami. He's now the Asa of Irabuji. That is the next in command to the Oba of Iraguji. He is using what they call the talking drum here, which is the dundun, and he's still playing dundun till this day. I just wanted you to note that.
Thank you. That is Lucila, the highest ranking Maya de Santo, making her speech. And the two persons behind, I don't
Juan Albain de Santos, and is the one in the center.
Didi, right?
Huh?
The Didi is on the left.
Sí, and Didi de Corredes de Santos, right?
Yeah.
So part of the mission was, right, to do a comparison between the traditions and how we practice the traditions in different areas, because we all understood that it came from the root, right, Ile Ife, and how it's manifested throughout the diaspora, right, is the understanding, the study, the comparative work that needs, I believe, yet to be done. Robert Farris Thompson is key in that work. And the work that I think needs to continue is making those comparisons, because like a pieces of a puzzle, we have to bring them together.
Can you stop there?
Mm-hmm.
This gentleman here was a professor of archaeology at Ife. He was the Aquina. That is a very important title of Ogboni Senior Council. And he was also a colleague at the University of Ife at the time. And here, of course, is Professor Wande Abimbola, who later became the Vice Chancellor, that is the president of the university. And I think you know who this person is.
Mm-hmm.
This young woman here is Martha. Of course, we all know who this is, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Who is now deceased.
Right.
Very important.
Oyotunji, the creator of Oyotunji Village in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we wanted to give you context so that now that we're going to talk about the experience and the impact that we think the conference had, right, from our different lenses and from our different experiences. We'll keep the exhibition up with Hochi's permission so that you can look at it even further and in more detail. But the idea of the conference, and I think that the work that still has to be done, is that comparison between the tradition, what remains, what has shifted, what has changed, why it has changed, so that both as scholars, as people initiated in the tradition, as the connection, right, that we started 41 years ago continues, there is still a lot of work to be done. So I thank Hochi for sharing the photos with us, because I didn't know they existed. So mil gracias, Baba.
It was a true pleasure. It was a pleasure.
So Abiodun, tell us, what was the impact in Africa? Because I remember coming out in the newspaper the next day.
Yeah.
As Voodoo Woman, and I was shocked.
Yeah. This is the way I remember the international Orisha Yoruba conference at Ile Ife in 1981. For me, it was the affirmation of the identities and beauty of all the children of Odudua, that is the progenitor of Yoruba race. It was palpable. You could feel it in the air. You could feel it even though you didn't know the names of the people coming from the diaspora. You felt like one of them. Um, it was a vivid confirmation of the richness the of Yoruba religion and culture in all its diasporic forms and colors. I was reminded of the momentous creation, the creation myth by Obatala, as captured in one Ifa verse, as I will recite to you. It says, I say it first in Yoruba and then I will translate in English. Òrìṣà ńlá dáró mẹ́ta, ó dá kan ní dúdú, ó dá kan ní pupa, ó dá kan ní funfun. Dúdú ni ó rẹ mí, ò gbọ́dọ̀ rẹ mí ní pupa. Dúdú ni ó rẹ mí, ò gbọ́dọ̀ rẹ mí ní funfun. Ìwà mi ni ó kọ́ tètè rẹ ní kùtùkùtù ọba òrìṣà. Òrìṣà ńlá, the creator divinity, prepared 3 dyes. He made one black, he made one yellow, he made one white. Make me black, do not make me yellow. Make me black, do not make me white. Dye me in my character first, in my Iwa first, at the dawn of creation. You could see the Iwa, you could see the different dyes, you could see all the children of Batala in their different hues, different colors, different something that will bring up what do you call it now? Goosebumps as you embrace them. I see the Iwa, which is the essential nature of a, and people don't think of this too often, that the Iwa, the essential nature of a person, which is generally translated as character, and of course, the possible implication for the study of Yoruba beauty or aesthetics. We saw beauty in that, the ultimate beauty of Yoruba culture during that conference. There is no doubt that the Iwa, the essential nature of a person, of the Yoruba, of the children of Odudua, is crucial to the definition of beauty in Yoruba thought. Even though many scholars who have written on or even studied the whole idea of beauty or aesthetics appear to have acknowledged this part of Iwa, the dynamic, the living relationship which exists between Iwa, that is the character of all these people from the diaspora, and Ewa, the beauty, has yet to be explained. It was that beauty that I experienced. And of course, some of you know, and most people do know, that the Yoruba say, They have the aphorism Iwalewa. That means Iwa constitutes beauty. What you are constitutes beauty. Because the Yoruba does not have an either or. They don't have the dichotomy we have in the West, which is white or black. No, we put everything together where we look at the range, we look at everybody is beautiful, which is hardly the case in Western aesthetics. Therefore, one place to begin the meaningful uh, study of Yoruba aesthetics is with Iwa. To overlook or to underrate this important prerequisite for beauty and to favor instead some external criteria or explanations will not only further remove us from the from the Yoruba aesthetic universe, which we were experiencing at that conference, but it will rob us of the full enjoyment and understanding of Yoruba art, of Yoruba people that came to gather uh, at Ile Ife, where the world, by the way, started. Because today, till today, there's a festival in Ife. If you go to that festival, you will be shown the place where Ife people believe that everybody in the world started from Ile Ife. Ile Ife means the place where the world started. Ile, house. Ife, where the world began. And you will see yourself in that picture. So, um, uh, I would say, fortunately, uh, uh, fortunately, scholars, uh, enthusiasts of Yoruba traditional thought, Yoruba religion and literatures, with their wealth of oral data, can be of immense help to those of us whose studies need to be increasingly less speculative, more Yoruba thought oriented, and contextually relevant, and to see that we indeed are all beautiful. Um, I will not say more than that for now. I know that you all want to chime in, but I have a few more things to say about this Iwa, this character. It's called character Iwa, IWA, which has a homophone Iwa existence in the Yoruba language. And this homophone or homophonous counterpart, if you like, is a noun formed from adding e to the verb wa, which means to exist. The fact that you exist means you have an identity. In normal, this is a normal nominalization process in the language uh, uh, of the in the Yoruba language. So what Professor Abimbola has done, he's a great scholar of he's a great scholar of Yoruba philosophy and Yoruba language, is that he has helped us to see the relationship between the two words Iwa, that is your character, and Ewa, your beauty. So it is not, so the fact that you're, it doesn't matter whether you're fat, you're green, you're thin, you're yellow, you're you have this color, there's everybody has the opportunity to claim their beauty in Ife. And that was something that I believe was very, very, it was amazing, to tell you the truth, because I, I, I thought about the conference, and I thought about the impact it made on me as a young scholar, because uh, as I said, Iwa is, by Professor Abimbola, as he said, is being, living, existing. That's what it is. And the highest attribute, attribute of Iwa, or the perfect ideal of form of Iwa, is immortality. That you were alive, you were there, you were, and a cognate aphorism says, Aiku pariwa, which literally means immortality completes existence. But more idiomatically, immortality is perfect existence. I felt this at the conference, and I will not, let me stop there and let other people chime in.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Uh, Angela, you reminded me of something I had totally forgotten, that Robert Farris Thompson was to be there. And at the last minute, he called that he couldn't go. And I asked you to cover for him in terms of doing presentations. So what was the experience like for you as a priestess of Yemaya, going to Abiekuta, meeting my vida, right? Connecting with Brazilian and Yoruba priestesses from the Yemaya tradition. How did you experience the event?
It's difficult to put it in a couple of words. So I'd like to share some experiences that I had. One in terms of language, which surprised me. I think it was the last night that we were there, and we met with some of the professors from the university, and one of them was going to serve me something, a liquid. And I said, ching ching. And he looked at me and he said, that's Yoruba. And I said, no, that's Spanish. I've said that in my family since I was a child. And that connection, that sense of nothing is really lost. It's reshaped, but it's never really lost. And so that intrigued me in terms of language. Another instance was we were going to Oxobo, and we were in a car, and some kind of insect came into the car, flew in, and all of us like, oh, we don't want it to touch us. And the driver, was Yoruba, said to us, no, that's a blessing. And it's even more a blessing if the insect touches your skin. And I was like, I'm not ready to accept that yet. But he made another comment that I could connect to my life. And it was that the fly, the house fly, is the one that people don't want in their home. And I connected that to things that I've said myself in my home and that I heard my mother say. When a fly would come into our home, it was always, and what bad news are you bringing? What bad news are you announcing? And that connected to what the chauffeur had said, the driver had said, with regard to the housefly being something that you didn't want in your house because it meant something negative. And that's survival. And another instance was at the conference, we're sitting down waiting, and this man walks down, he's walking toward the front. And I looked and I said, oh, I didn't know Ken was coming. And I'm referring to Ken McIntyre, the musician. And he was a splitting image of that person. And suddenly I felt, who do I look like in Africa? Who do I look like? Where is somebody that looks like me? So that I have that identity, that link to Africa in that sense, the physical sense. And it was just amazing to have that experience. And then the experience of going to Abeokuta and having the Maida Santo from Brazil begin to chant and have the other begin. I mean, even now my hair stand up thinking of it, because again, that was that connection. And that is so important.
And well, describe that a little bit, because everybody started crying when my Vida started singing in Yoruba and the other priestesses joined her. Everyone just lost it.
It was just absolutely amazing. And again, that connection. And it was like what I said in the presentation, because Martha said that Robert Farris Thompson was supposed to give the presentation. And what she didn't say was, he didn't leave a paper for her. So I had to, that night, after we got in and exhausted from the flight, I sat with a manual typewriter trying to put something together that could be presented at the conference. And it was amazing, because I never thought that I would be a presenter. I had gone just to be an observer. So that was something that was interesting. And it was also in terms of thinking what we as scholars, as people of the university need to do. I know that many of us get locked into the publish or perish. And also tenure track. And so that limits sometimes the things that we can do. Mm-hmm. And I think that most of us really need to start thinking in terms of how do we provide materials for the younger people, books for the younger people, curriculum for the younger people, because your life begins at birth and your identity begins then. And so it's very important for people to really understand the links and the ties that they have to Africa, and to be proud of those links and ties, and to be able to do scholarship with regard to the elders. Not only the elders that we have in the diaspora, but the elders that we have in Africa, because the elders have a history. The elders have a pain. Mother Africa lost many of his children, hundreds and thousands of his children, and those mothers in Africa mourned. Those mothers in Africa passed on the stories of their lost children, of their lost grandchildren, etc. And we need to capture some of that. And I'm sorry that I haven't done that. The one thing that came as a consequence of the conference for me was that I created a course at my campus that dealt with focusing on Santeria and Espiritismo, and linking those two within the context of my Latino community. And so that was something that I felt was a consequence, a result of my exposure to the conference. But on a personal level, it was all of those little things that I talked about, whether the fly, the ching ching, the thing in terms of Abeokuta and the Maida Santo. And in addition to that, when we went to the shrine for Shango, and when we went to the shrine for Ochun, I picked up a little pebbles here and there, and I brought them back with me. And I was going to have a ritual of feeding, and I had asked the Orishas, my Orishas, if they wanted those things. And so they were fed and then placed inside of the receptacles in which I have the things for my Orishas. So those are my personal experiences.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much. Jorge, you wanted to add some personal experience, that the impact that experience had for you, in addition to capturing some of the imagery?
Yeah, well, the thing is that to me, it was going back to my spiritual DNA and be close to what I was experiencing in a much more complete way than I was experiencing in when I was initiated. So the whole thing discovered in front of me in such a strong way, and with so many wise people there, so many, so many, uh, uh, so many uh, beauty so much beauty in the way of they behave, the way the protocol that they all carry things in a very very special and respectful way, which is not common to have it in that way, when you where you can see how the tradition consolidates knowledge, consolidates uh, uh, feelings, emotions, and meaning of life. That was very 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 strong for me, because uh, by the time I was initiated, everything seemed to be very fractured, and a little bit loose. When I came to Africa, it all made sense to me in a very, very revealing way. And to me, that has been always what had moved me uh, through my years while I was maturing, um, on my way to become a babalawo. And, and it was the African experience that molded me in terms of understanding, like Roland said, Iwa, character, and integrity, and being responsible uh, uh, for all the things that I learned, and, and that I was responsible for sharing, and for transforming other people that came into my life and helping them. Uh, I think the fact that you go to a place where, let's say, yo, in which Shango is the main attraction, and being there and sensing the essence of Shango alive on the air, and taken by the hand with this priest of Shango. Is something that is life changing completely. So, so Africa gave me the opportunity to really uh, know, and and uh, have more consciousness where all that I was doing was coming from, and making a lot of sense for me, giving me internal strength to carry out my duties, and to really go to the essence of what my performance as a religious person has to be. So it was exemplary, and also the importance of the knowledge that is embedded in the tradition, and the verses of Ifa and the poetry of Ifa, because that's when you start understanding that that is not something that you acquire in the same way that we acquire here in the diaspora. Although we have our elders and the traditions, but uh, most of us come from another background and go into the tradition from a Catholic or Christian tradition, and we are reported like a plant in another realm. So it's not the same as when you are born with that. Have the opportunity to to be in the chain of knowledge, in the chain of experience that will make everything more has more integrity and has more sense, and your style of life is completely matches with your spiritual understanding of life. So that's quite an experience for me, because you see everything match and come together in a very, very powerful way.
Mhm.
That what really struck me.
Thank you, Hochi. Thank you. I went as a yawo. Actually, that's why I was constantly dressed in white, because I was initiated in Cuba in '81, just before going on the trip. And for me, it was I was in the process, and I'm in process, right? We all are, of continued learning. But what it allowed me to see and allowed me to understand that we're pieces of the puzzle, that our responsibility is, as pieces of the puzzle, is to bring that puzzle together. And throughout the experiences of being there, and the moment that Abiekuta, when my vida started singing in Yoruba, someone commented, "Oh, we don't hear those songs anymore," right? We don't hear those songs anymore. And that was really important, because what you assume, right, that Africa kept everything. But as Angela said, our people were torn away. You know what I'm saying? So in bringing together that story, we need to understand what happened to us globally. We need to, do that understanding those experiences in ways that we can bring back the puzzle and really augment the puzzle, because it's not going to be the same. It's going to be different. And I mean, I had experiences that seemed silly, but were really important to me, because I was taught, right, in the Cuban system, in the Lucumi system, that I had for the first 3 months, I had to wear stockings, I had to wear a shawl, I had to wear, a cover. And then my stockings kept running every day. And I was like, oh, how am I going to have stockings on every day and follow the rules, right? And then at the point, I ran out of stockings. So I said, well, no more stockings, right? And then, like, you start thinking, but nobody wore stockings in Africa at that time or then, right? So there's certain parts of our traditions have acquired Catholic types of, of, of patina, different kinds of patina, right? That we need to look at and investigate. Because I had an elder that was there. I remember Rosa Leva, and she kept saying, "You don't have your stockings on. I'm going to tell your godmother. You don't have your shawl." And then, like, what it taught me was, like, our experiences have developed differently in different places because of the reality of colonialism, the reality of Eurocentric imposition, right? Yeah. And that we have acquired some of that, even though we have maintained some of the essence, right, of the Yoruba tradition, right? Because we all talk about Iwa. We know that it's central to our being. That character is central. So whether my father knew Iwa as central, as a word, my father was a man of character. He was born here in Loíza. So everything was about character. Your word is character. Your word is a contract, right? You don't need a piece of paper. What you need is to be a person of your word, a person of character. So I was instilled with that. So how these teachings traveled and how they manifest is very important. And I think the other thing that I learned in the process, right, of organizing, and I have to call the name of Laura Moreno Ibaye, Malia Ibaye, and thank her son, Richard Ai, for sending a lot of photos. So there'll be other photos that we'll be showing. Was the fact that nothing is impossible, because when we all agreed that we were going to make the trip to Ile Ife, and then Wandy said, well, we need to go by next year. And I was like, how are we going to get that? There's no money. There's no way of doing this. This is not going to happen. And all of a sudden, things just started clicking. How they started clicking, I don't know, right? We call it the ancestors, we call it spirit, we call it love, we call it commitment, but we all got there. And almost 100 people made that trip together, right? And I think that the fact that people committed to making the trip, the people are people committed to connecting in ways that they had not connected, because we were all a little bit like, can we do this, can this happen? And when we were there, it just was fluid. It happened, right? So that I go to what Hochi's saying, that we maybe need to do this again in ways
For sure.
that work now, right? That work 41, 42 years later, because the essence of who we are globally is critical, especially with what's happening in many of our countries where a sort of radical, destructive Euro evangelism is taking place and destroying many of our locations and many of our sacred places. So that there has to be another level of reality and conversation around what is happening 41 years later. So thank you. So we move from Africa to Brazil. So Danny Dawson was in Brazil, and Senna was there. So that, what was Brazil like?
I think Zeno should go first in that. It was home.
Zeno, is Zeno, are we hearing Zeno? Hola, Zeno. No se oye todavía. Hay una comunicación.
Ineda, can you hear us?
Neda, can you hear Zeno and translate for Zeno?
No, but we have a deal here. He's gonna call me. He's calling me now.
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. Yeah. If he can call you, and then you can say it or translate it. Right?
Okay, Zeno, I'm all ears. First of all, I'd like to thank very much for being here, for being invited to be here. I want to welcome Eshu Laroye. In fact, it was an event that perhaps was one of the strongest events. It made me remember what Dr. Angela said about Diabida, our missing Diabida. And a very similar situation happened. Aconteceu uma situação muito semelhante, o quê? With my grandmother. A very similar situation happened with my grandmother. Some priests they were supposed to have a meeting in her room with some priests and her. And she started to sing. They got very surprised at that moment. And they started to sing along with her. This was probably the most important moment and most impactful moment. One of the most impactful moments. Because this event defined the connection that there is among us, between us, Brazil, and Africa. I would like also to take the chance about something that Martha mentioned. Our community, as we call it, has been really very much aggressed here in Brazil, and in special especially by the Pentecostal church, that in fact has the purpose to destroy our culture and our religion. In attempt for their development, their religion of their their development of their religion. So it's very good to think how strong it was, the presence of those people of Africa, the priests, the old ladies, because this strengthens our self-esteem. And the religious events that happened in Gantua, with Mãe Stella in Afonjá, or with Balbino or Baraim in Aganju, and all the other sites, other temples. It was a magical moment. Certainly, it lasts in our memories, and it must, with much emphasis, to be disseminated to this generation, this actual generation, present generation. Because we did not have, and nor we do have, situations like that one that can be presented today to this generation. And as Martha said, there are songs that we are not going to listen anymore. We listen to them in the Ile Ife, and very probably some years later in Gantua, in Casabranca, but very hardly this will propagate and remain without unity, without community events like this one that happened in Bahia. I remember very clearly the identification of people they felt when they saw all those adornments, all those clothings. And people they said here in Bahia, Africa is here. África está acá. And certainly, we felt at that moment the pride, how proud it was to have been grown up, to have been raised from Ile Ife. So I cannot not mention here the memory. Danny will complete this talk, this that I'm saying. Louis Dossot and Frankie Malabé. They were the ones who did. They made a song that's unforgettable. They presented beautiful shows to our home, to our blood, for our blood. And I hope that that issue is allowing us to happen right now may happen more times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zenon. Thank you, Eneida.
Obrigada,
Thank
Zeno.
you.
Obrigada.
Thank you. Obrigada.
Obrigada.
I
Posso
think
desligar?
probably one of the major moments for me was when, and I think Seno was referring to that, we brought drummers from Trinidad, drummers from Cuba, drummers from Haiti, and they all played together in a terreiro with the drummers from Brazil. And when the drummers of Brazil started, everyone, of course, participated, and everyone from Brazil participated. And as the different countries joined in the drumming, right, what was felt not only was electricity, right, in our bodies, but the reality was that everything that was going on didn't stop because the vibe, the music was the same. The energy was the same, the rhythms were the same, so that we came together in a way that was beyond expectations. So those moments continue to happen, and those moments need to continue happening. And I agree with Seno, because distance sometimes, even though we have technology and we have the opportunity to FaceTime or Zoom and so on and so forth, there's something about being together and an energy that comes because we are present in each other's spirit that is critical. So, Danny, if you want to continue. Not hear you.
Oh,
yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to thank you for the event in the first place, just to have the idea and the courage to do it. You know, but I didn't go to Africa. I went to the one in Brazil. And, you know, it's this lifelong thing. After everybody's seen Black Orpheus, they all want to go to Brazil and hang out in Brazil, you know. But it was also where I got a chance to learn about the density and the richness of African culture in Brazil. Because that conference in itself attracted the people who were leaders in that subject and people who cared about it. That's how I met Zeno, how Zeno became a lifelong friend at the same time. So it was incredible. That's how I know Eneida through a friend, Ronnie Scott, who came to that, and Ronnie introduced me to Eneida. You know, so there's an incredible connection going on. But the richness of the culture in Brazil was also what made everything possible. I was at the event we talked about where Emilio was singing, Emilio Barreto was singing, and it was Frankie Malave and Eddie Rodriguez and Dewey Basso playing bata. I'm not quite sure if Kubata was there, no, he wasn't there, okay. But what was really interesting to me about the whole thing was that his grandmother, and see, Zeno's being modest. Zeno's grandmother was the most famous priestess in Brazil. His grandmother was Mãe Menina.
Yeah.
You know, so what's really interesting when you see her, after Emilia got through singing, she said, you know, I haven't heard those songs since I was a little girl. You know, so everybody understood there's a tradition. The tradition is constantly growing and shifting. And also, we're losing things. One time, Zeno called and said, you know, one of the women who was in the kitchen at Gantois, she said, yeah, she died. He said, we lost the library. She knew thousands of songs. You know, so again, unless we formalize it, well, it is formalized in one sense, but we have to be really conscious of the loss, and then we have to rebuild from that loss too. We have to understand that too. But again, Gantois was interesting too, because it was also at the point, I mean, not just Gantois, but the conference was interesting, because that was at the place where my Stella, one of the famous priestesses of the time, that's where my Stella said, We don't need Catholicism to defend our religion.
Exactly.
And there was an outroar, in the newspapers where they really got mad. And some of the old priestesses were mad also. But what she was saying, she said, our religion is valid unto itself. It doesn't have to be justified in another person. So the opportunity to have that kind of conference gave her also the courage to say that, the courage to say in a country that calls itself Catholic, the Catholicism doesn't validate us. We're valid by ourselves. We're already valid. So the conference was constantly that. I remember in a mistake, Martha, we were at the one of the programs you did at the it was the big auditorium, and we thought we were taking a ride back to the city so we could go to our hotel. And we got on the wrong bus, and we went to a dinner at the governor's mansion. But it was really funny because I got a sense on the mansion on the trip. We met one of the famous priestesses of Brazil too, Makoto Valgina, Valgina Pinto. And she walked over and through a friend, through Ken Dasa, Dr. Dasa was there, and he was translating for me. She said, what do you think of the show? Because they had a candomblé show. And I said, I thought it was great. She said, what do you think of the capoeira was great? She said, oh, yeah, the candomblé. She said, no, folklorico. That's not real candomblé. That's something we do for a show. That's something they sell for tourists. That's not the real candomblé. And she said, that capoeira you saw, that's the same thing that's for the show. And she pointed to someone in the bus, said, that's real capoeira. She pointed to Cobra Mansa, Cobrinha. And then I realized that there's a critique within Afro-Brazilian culture that establishes who they are. They know exactly who they are, and they know what's valid. They know what's Torah stuff. They know what's real. So, but also because I remember with the arrogance of the people from the United States, we always go down and tell people in Brazil what they should do, instead of asking them what they've been doing as long as we have and how they learning from them. So I mean, it's really funny to watch that thing. But the conference was not only a religious conference, but it galvanized Afro-Brazilian culture. It made people proud to be Africans in their culture. It made people understand the traditions of Africa and how deep they are and how valid they are. So we talked about specifically the religious tradition, and that was just the initial appeal to it. But the other effect was having everybody who was of African descent in Brazil, again, becoming proud of being African. And all the people in the crowd understood that too, all the people in the audience. But it was funny to realize how deep the tradition is and that it is an international tradition. It is not, some ramble stuff thrown together. You had brilliant people like Pierre Verger, who also presented at the conference, Mai Stella presented at the conference, again, but the range of people talking, the range of people presenting was incredibly brilliant too. So again, Martha, thank you for doing that conference. Let's do another one.
Well, there was a lot of people that came together, so I can't take credit that it was Wandy, it was Mali Ai from Trinidad, Laura Moreno, who kept me strong because it was like every time we turned around, somebody would be calling saying we can't go. For some reason, something would happen. And we thought, like, at one point I said, well, nobody's going, right? And then the last one was Robert Farris Thompson. When he called, it was like, oh my God, but it came together. But it was a lot of people. It wasn't only me. So I appreciate it.
Well, I think one of the things that really made it great too was the fact that Gantois opened its doors.
Oh, yeah.
And that we met in the candomblé and we ate in the candomblé. We were fed by them. We were fed traditional food of Afro-Brazilians in Bahia. So it wasn't like an academic conference at all. It was people of like minds from like traditions meeting with each other.
That was the intent of having our scholars, our cultural workers, our traditional leaders together, right? Because that's the context in which you learn, and that's the context in which you share. And, universities tend to be complicit with stifling our traditions. So I don't care that there are departments. Yeah, no, I do care that there are departments. That's a good thing because we fought for them. But the reality is that the educational process happens outside of the university, right? It's not within the university that it happens because it stifles and is complicit in maintaining a very Eurocentric vision of what is excellent and what is not excellent. And I think the other thing is that the conference began to introduce a narrative that we need to promote. Most of our countries let go or stop enslavement late in the process. So most of the people in Brazil could still trace their lineage directly to places in Africa.
Zen, are you done that? You gone back to Africa with it? You tracing family lines too?
Because it's that immediate. It's only about 2-3 generations away.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing in Cuba, the same thing in Brazil, the same thing in Haiti. We're not that far away from a direct lineage to the motherland, right? So that we need to stop talking about our experience as if it were so apart from the continent, because in fact we're only about 2 or 3 grandparents away from tracing a lineage. You know what I'm saying? And making those ties. I think that the other thing that we have to understand is that Africa went through its enslavement and its colonization, right? Because of European powers and being divided in the ways that it was. And so that the hurt is on both ends that we have to repair and that we have to reconnect with. And that's the work, you know, and I'm convinced, and this is my opinion, right? So I claim it. We can learn about our experience without bringing us together in ways that make sense. We can. Puerto Rico can't know about its Africanity unless it knows about Cuba, and unless it knows about Santo Domingo, and it knows about all of the places that we traveled to in the process.
Haiti in particular.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So that when you go to different places in Puerto Rico, in terms of the research I've done, the South is heavily influenced by Haiti. Absolutely influenced by Haiti in the way that the construction of temples and altars are done and so on and so forth. Very different from, you know, the area of Loíza. So that I think that research that, you know, Robert Forrest Hampson put into place is the one that we have to sort of dig into and continue to do more investigative research, and also with people who are in the tradition. Excuse me.
Yeah, I want to say that I just reached out. I was in Loíza in Puerto Rico, and I met a priest of Ogun. His name is Ayala. And he gave me this.
Of a gigante mass, yeah.
And he carved in the evening. He had a shrine. We both went to the shrine to pay, to do all the things we needed to do. And you know, one thing that surprised me was that he looked exactly like one of my brothers who has, and the first time I saw him, I looked at him and I said, "What are you doing here?" or something. Then he held me, I held him. We both developed goosebumps. And you are so right. We're not too far away.
We're
I
not.
have never seen anyone, like in the whole of United States, all my travel, I've never seen anyone like Ayala. He was like, I'm telling you,
You never told me that. That's so important. You never told me that.
Yeah, you know, and
Oh.
I did some research which hopefully someday I will publish. But this is very interesting. So you are very right.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a narrative that we have to develop from a different perspective, a time perspective, because
yeah,
people talk about enslavement as if it was, you know, eons and eons away.
yeah.
It was yesterday.
It is
It was
all,
yesterday.
and something I wanted to say, if I have a minute, um, uh, about Zenos. Just comment on it is that uh, you know, Christianization, all kinds of things have robbed us of the beauty of the Orisha. Today, most Even in Africa, they equate issue with Satan, with the devil. Whereas issue is so far from it. The missionaries just they saw this powerful Orisha, and they did everything to malign it, to throw mud on it, to give it a bad name. And you know the saying, give a dog a bad name and hang it. That was what they did. They gave it a bad name. But Eshu really means, is made up of two words, A and Shu. A is a normal nominalization process of the Yoruba language where a verb becomes a noun. Shu means to bring together. Eshu means that which unites, that which brings together. That is Eshu. And once the missionaries saw that that is the thing that is bringing us together, they have to make sure that it doesn't bring us together anymore. So that is something very important. And I really thank you very much, Zeno, for that. And I want to say that all the divinities, hundreds or thousands of them, they all have their individual beauties. Everyone is beautiful. Ogun is beautiful. Oya is beautiful. Oshun is beautiful. Shango is beautiful. Iku is beautiful. Egba, all you mentioned them all. They're all beautiful. But the missionary teachings have made it impossible for us to see the beauty in this Orisha. And if I may have one more little thing, which I like to say to Yoki Melero's thing about the demeanor, the way the diviners carried themselves, the way you saw them. There was something. They didn't have greed. They were not flowing with money, but there was something about their aura, the way they handled things, that was really special. And that has to do, you can get to it a little bit through what Robert Perry something calls coolness.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit more than that. Let me tell you what that demeanor is. In the Yoruba have a saying, "Ìwà pẹ̀lẹ́ sùúrù," which means cool, control, the ability to control your mind and your body. And it is said in one of the verses, Ifa verses, if you allow me, I will say it, then I will translate it for you. He said, "Ẹ̀dá tó gbẹ̀yìn lérí kì í pàtètè, pẹ̀lẹ́ lárẹwà rìn, jẹ́jẹ́ lọmọ lọ́lá yan, igbá onípẹ̀lẹ́ kì í fọ́, àwo onípẹ̀lẹ́ kì í fàya, ohun tí a fẹ̀sọ̀ mú kì í bàjẹ́, ohun tí a fagbára mú kókó ní í le, ẹ̀sọ̀ pẹ̀lẹ́ ni à á pàmókùrù, a kì í kánjú túlú ọ̀rán, pẹ̀lẹ́pẹ̀lẹ́ lejò gọ̀pẹ́, ìgbín ò lọ́wọ́, ìgbín ò lẹ́sẹ̀, ẹ̀sọ̀ nìgbín gbàgungi." Meaning, a person carrying eggs on the head needs alertness. The beautiful one has need of a composed gait. Walking gracefully adds to the beauty of the wealthy. The breakable plate of the careful one never breaks. The secret of the calm individual is never accidentally revealed. in public. Anything carried out using brute force always encounters resistance. It is with calculated patience that one kills the sandfly, because the sandfly could land in your private part. You don't want to use a machete. You don't want to use a gun to kill it. So it's with calculated patience that to kill the sandfly. A person should never be in a hurry to collect the tiny but delicious mushroom called oron, because it's usually mixed with sand. So you have to collect it with considerable patience. The snake succeeds in climbing the branchless palm tree. Yet it is with patience and endurance that it climbs the tree. So what we're talking about here is iwapele, gentle character. It is not more than gentle character, calmness, not to lose your composure, not to fly off the handle. This is what you feel. This is what they go to learn in among the Babalawo. I'm sorry, in the profession of divine. The diviners learn this. It's not something they necessarily come with, and it takes about sometimes 20 years for you. You don't react like you don't start reacting to everything. You take it in and you do. You at the right moment, you say the right thing. Thank you for that. I just thought I should make that clear.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to turn to Angela because your photo that you sent and you shared, thank you so much. I had forgotten that Socorro Bayron, and this espiritista, born in Puerto Rico and I guess developed in New York, went to Brazil.
Yeah.
So what was that for her? Because I know you were with her a lot. How was that for her?
Oh, she was very excited, and it meant a lot to her to be able to share her experience because she was a presenter. She and I both talked about the tradition of Mesa Blanca in Puerto Rico. And so for her, it was just an amazing experience. I can't put it in words. It's like something you feel, and sometimes you can't articulate it. And that was, I think, what was coming across with her particularly, that she was just so overwhelmed with everything and seeing the people and just being there and being able in front of a large audience to talk about what she felt and what she believed in and what she was committed to, which was Mesa Blanca. It was a good experience.
Well, I think it was very important to talk about espiritismo, right? Spiritism, because the process of not being initiated in the Orisha tradition, but being a espiritista and really talking about spirituality, right? That is what is, I think, more prevalent here in Puerto Rico because of the Congo presence historically. Is very important because that exists throughout the diaspora in different ways, right? The belief in spirit and the manifestation of spirit. So that her being there was very important because it added another element that we had not really discussed in the conference in Africa.
Also, in terms of espiritismo, allowed you to pull or to manifest spirits that were identified as African. And so that became very important. And for some people, because Catholicism was so prevalent and so dominant, it was also a way of going into espiritismo and still dealing with some of the traditions, African traditions of placing offerings, of doing chants to some extent. And that took place before Santeria goes into Puerto Rico. You already have the African influence in Espiritismo de Puerto Rico. You know? So that was very important.
And I'd like to turn to Seno because my mini Nia was, if there was a queen, my mini Nia was the super queen. And growing up with your grandmother, there was my mini Nia, and everyone wanted to meet her. And we had the good fortune at the conference of at least being in her presence was amazing, was absolutely amazing. Do you have reactions of how she felt about us being there?
My menininha is very important. The story of her dedication. She has dedicated 70 years of her life to take care of the candomblé. She initiated more than 2,000 people. Mammy Nia didn't do anything else in her life besides educating and growing her children. And one of them was her substitute, Mãe Cleusa, and Mãe Cleusa was my mother, Zeno's mother. And the interaction and reaction of my grandmother before the event, en face of the event, was perhaps a situation unique and peculiar. Her happiness, she felt that she was again among her family. It was visible. And it was very impressive, the immediate communication between her and people in Ife, her immediate interaction. And this is felt until today. It is an indelible mark. It's something that is not erasable. And I remember when the priests got into the ancestors' room, and their reactions, because they were looking at the altars, the asentamentos, commenting that it was exactly the same thing back that they had at home.
Mm.
Those asentamentos, those altars, they are still there up until today. They were put together by Maria Julia's husband, the first Mãe de Santo, the first Yoruba priest in Gantua. And she was born, ela nasceu, desculpe, Zeno, pode repetir? She was born in Agbelkuta. And her husband, one of the first things that he did was these ancestors' altars. So it's justifiable, it's easy to understand what the intimacy between these priests when they came and they saw it. So my menininha is unique. The story of her life, the dedication, her dedication, her proximity with the roots that she has had throughout her whole life. It will be very difficult to repeat itself here in Brazil. And this is our priestess, Mãe Menininha.
So what that suggests, right? And going back to sort of what the Kochi was sort of whispering when we were talking one day, right? Like, what's the next step? What from what we've experienced now after 40 years, right? All of us have been active in different ways, right? In our tradition, either as investigative scholars. I mean, we're all initiated, as far as I know. So that what is the next step now, right? Because we've had comments in other panels of that, you know, people are doing things in this age of technology too quickly, not delving into information, not delving into the rituals, right? Environmental conditions are harming some of the plants that historically have been used, right? So that now replacements are being found because climate change is affecting the natural elements that we need to use, right? And then also the challenges that we're having with as Seno said, Pentecostal and evangelical attacks, frontal attacks on our traditions, right? And this whole notion of erase culture when culture is the essence of who we are, right? I mean, African-based Europe and not European cultures. We're looking at African-based cultures as our cultural lessons, and books are being taken off the library shelves, and censorship is being promoted. Where are we going forward? What's the future looking like, and how do we help mold the future we want? Right? Because if we look at the IFA system, right, it's about the present, the past, and the future. So I turn to those of you who are thinking about the future to give us some guidance.
I'd like to interject something, and it may not be directly related to what you're asking. I remember that when I made the presentation that I did in Ife, I closed off with the idea that it was essential that our younger generation be encouraged to learn different languages, that we should not be monolingual, We should be bilingual, trilingual, multilingual, because if we talk about the diaspora, we're talking about so many different languages that are part of our experience in the diaspora. And so, one of the things that we should do as people talking about the future is to ensure that as the curriculum changes and as things be dropped from what we offer our young people, that language not be one of them, that language always be encouraged, and that language should be taught from the perspective that if our enslaved ancestors were able to learn the language of the oppressor, then we can learn the language that governs all of us in different parts of the diaspora. So that's one thing that I would say for the future. It's essential that we be able to communicate with each other, that we begin to collaborate with each other, understanding each other's languages. That's important.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. Hochi, you're smiling, so go ahead. No te oímos.
This is muted. Okay. This is about connecting. This is about being together. This is about supporting each other. This is about showing how people have to live in a spiritual way. The mechanics of our belief system really provides for that, because it is very practical. It is very down to the point. It is very supportive from all points of view, from the psychological, from the emotional, from the physical, from the economical, everything. It deals with everything, and this is some kind of a spiritual tech that we don't find in other type of belief system. It's very complete. It shows every aspect that has to be taken care of, and not only that. It's like Roland said about beauty, and for sure, the profound elegance of knowledge of the belief system is something really, really, really outstanding. It's very powerful. It's very connecting. It's very at the same time. You discover through it. You start to understand the language of nature, the language of the metaphysical. Everything put together in one whole vision, one complete vision. And the people when they get initiated, that they start feeling in a different way the aesthetic emotion of knowing something spiritually, of knowing something uh, for sure from the inside out, that they're completely certain. That gives you a whole different way to look at what you at your surrounding, and not only that, it makes it in such a beautiful way and complete way that other belief systems are lacking. I think that the complete experience of being immersed in Orisha is a whole different way of looking at the world, and it's not divisive. It's on the other hand, it's connecting. It's 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 integrating everything, and that's the type of mentality you develop. It's not everything on a department, or segregated, or all scattered, or put in different uh, qualities or definitions that they tend to separate. They tend to dismember things. Why? I don't know why, but I can tell you that being closer, being more together, is stronger always. And it will be some time that the material need eventually will take you to the spiritual need to address all the issues that you have to deal in life. And it's not from a completely, let's say, uh, uh, it's a matter of disconnection with the physical reality, with because many of the belief systems, they put it in a way that it doesn't prove real the way you deal with the everyday, and
Mm.
with the situation that you are working on. So when you apply uh, the belief system, it works in a much more complete, strong, and unifying way. Uh, and that's I think we have to we have to make sure that uh, people who are prejudiced about what we believe in, and the word prejudice is judgment before, and judgment before knowing, because they don't know. They can understand because they don't know. They're being told something about this, but if you show them to connect and to understand what the principles that move our belief system, that's going to be a whole different story, because it's going to be an option for them. Uh, for us, I in the everyday, I deal with different types of religious backgrounds. But why do they come? Well, many times they come because they haven't found the answer. They haven't found the solution. Or they haven't found the real outlook that they need to handle what they have to handle in their immediate situation in their lives. So I think that's something we have to show and share, but being sure that we can show them how all these evolved and got to the point where it is right now, in a respectful way also. So they know, like you said about the Spiritistas, and my mother, and all the ladies in the side of my mother, and all the lineage in my mother's house, they were all spiritists. So to me, it was not difficult to be ingrained in this, because it was something that was very close. It gave me a lot of support, and it was not seen as something like pulled by the hair. It was something natural and something that was taken in account and was respected. It is a little bit different, but it works. So I think we have to somehow do the work in terms of how we can explain this in a way that it is enlightening, it is respected, and it can show a path for some people who are really close to this understanding of nature and life. You know.
Thank you, Hochi. Danny, did you want to make some comments around New York? Because the last conference was in New York that we put together.
I think the conference in New York was a kind of surprise for people also, because it was where you had the kind of jaded New Yorker practitioners who had a chance to look at internationalism again. And I think you brought up the drummers from Trinidad again, and again, it was a surprise because you realize everybody has a tradition just as rich as yours, but also it solidifies that understanding of it as being international, so. But, for me, the highlight of it, of course, was Brazil, but the New York one was again, a necessary kind of vehicle for that. Martin, we were supposed to do one in Haiti also.
We were, and we did, and it's sort of, I think that the weight of having to put them together, or taking the weight of putting it together almost as an institution, as the Caribbean Cultural Center, was a lot, even though we got help from other people. but we needed more help, right, to put together an international event, right? And you need more investment than just one institution trying to pull it off, because the bigger it got, the heavier the weight got. So I think that what we need to look at going forward, where we are, I think, in a different place, because before, um, I think that the number of initiates was a lot less in number than they are now. I think there's another reality in what that we're facing now. I mean, like I go to Cuba, you see initiates all over because it's more open. In New York, I mean, the initiation is incredible, right? Summer comes up and everybody's dressed in white. So I think that the opening of arms to traditions, especially the increase in awareness of being of African descent, of being an African descendant, of not being in the closet about your tradition, but coming out of the closet and coming out of the basements, brings us to another point in 2022. And I think that one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation is, what does it mean being in 2022 with more people initiated, with more people being gravitated to our traditions, with more people traveling to the continent and traveling throughout the diaspora? Why then are we having the kinds of issues that we're having attacking our traditions, right? It's a contradiction almost, right? Because if we're seeing these traditions as being in the closet or in a basement practicing, right, as opposed to taking on the issues of the moment that are affecting our people, then what's the point, right? If we're talking about the warrior principles that made our ancestors retain these traditions, protect these traditions, how is it that in 2022 we're having temples attacked in Brazil, having people attacked here? We did an exhibition a couple of years ago, and then we had people on loudspeakers trying to drown out the bata drummers when we did an exhibition. So that, what is this that is happening, right? I have tremendous pride in that we have been able to amplify, reach out to more people, understanding our traditions and loving our traditions. But at the same time, the counterattack or the pushback has been very, very strict, very, very harsh. And I think 2022 has to deal with that harshness. We can't allow temples and history in Brazil to be destroyed. We can't allow it to be destroyed here in Puerto Rico. We can't allow it to be destroyed anywhere, right? Anywhere we can't allow the destruction or dismantling of those things that we have held dear, and our parents and our grandparents held dear. So that there's a conversation that has to be had, one of pride, one of dignity, one of iwa, right, of character and having maintained these traditions, but also what does one do about these frontal attacks to destroy our history, to reconfigure what we have been able to sustain and retain, right? So that I think that the conversation going forward requires another conversation and another lens, because it's wonderful that we're having more participation in our traditions, but also the attacks and the destruction of our history and our knowledge is an issue.
Marta, undoubtedly we need to get together. The only question is where, because I think that is essential, because just the kind of effect that you had in Nigeria and in Brazil in terms of celebrating a tradition that was seen questionable. It was in fact reinforcing it, helping that tradition just by doing it. But I think everywhere we could go, it's necessary. So I think Brazil is another good location, or even Nigeria.
Yeah.
So
I want to say that Ifa divination already predicted this type of thing because Ifa is very dynamic.
Mm.
It's not static as people think. Yoruba culture is not static. It's always um, is the river that never at rest, always moving. In Ifa, we're told that bí òní rí ọ̀la lè mọ́ rí bẹ́ẹ̀ ní jẹ́ kí babaláwo dá Ifá ọ̀rọ̀ ọ̀run. Today's divination may not be valid tomorrow. This is the reason that diviners, babalawos, must divine every 5 days because things are changing and they have to be prepared for it. They cannot, we cannot stay, we cannot sit by, we cannot, um, we can't just sit back and think that there will be no attacks. No, no, there will be attacks. There will be, but the Ifa divination, the Ifa priests have already made provision to uh, to contain this type of this kind of attacks and so on. And this is where we need to consult. We need um, we need more. We need to have more conferences. Perhaps invite diviners, babalawos, to share, to sort of brainstorm and share their knowledge with us on how this is going to be done. It's not, I mean, this is, we've been given this wonderful legacy, but you have to protect it. It's not guaranteed if you don't protect it. Thank you.
Thank you. I say thank you to Angela. Thank you for sharing the photos and all the information. Danny, thank you. Abildu, thank you always. And you didn't tell me about that, about the Behigante. I have to circle back to you. Hochi, thank you for pulling out all the beautiful photographs. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Seno and Eneida, gracias, obrigada. I think that what we will do is do, as you said, Abiodun, put together some babalawos to divine, because the divination is the now, the past, and into the future. So we will be planning into the future. Thank you so very much for being part of this conversation. Gracias. Good evening, all. Thank you for being with us, those of you who have been with us.